and the source of our word taboo, the system of rules and prohibitions linking everyday existence to the world of the numinous, which permeated every aspect of ancient Polynesian life. We picked our way around the outside of the heiau, trying to get a sense of what was there. What remained of the original structure was a raised, dry stone platform more than 100 feet long and about half as wide, rising to a height of 10 feet at the beach end. It was said to have been nearly twice this size when it was first seen by Europeans in the late 1700s, and would have been an imposing edifice with a commanding view of the bay. Or so we imagined. The stone stairway up to the top of the platform was roped off, and no fewer than 3 separate signs reminded us that no trespassing was allowed. Visitors were admonished not to rap or to remove any of the stones, or to climb on the walls, or in any other way to disrespect the site. Heiau on the islands of Hawaii have more signage than similar structures on other islands, and given the number of visitors, it's easy to see why. But encounters with the past are different when they are mediated in this way, and I was glad that our first experience of such places had been deep in a forest in the Marquesas, where we had wandered freely among the ruins, ruminating after our own fashion upon the passage of time. Directly in front of the heiau was an obelisk built of the same black lava rock, but cemented in a very un-Polynesian way. It was about 10 or 12 feet high, and was mounted with a bronze commemorative plaque that read, "In this heiau, January 28th, 1779, Captain James Cook, R.N., read the English burial service over William Watman, seaman, the first recorded Christian service in the Hawaiian Islands." Here was a completely different story from the one the heiau had to tell. On the surface, it was the story of poor Watman, dead of a stroke, whose last wish had been to be buried on shore, and of the almost accidental arrival of Christianity, the rippling effect of which would be felt in these islands for centuries to come. But the much larger story, only obliquely indicated here, was of the coming of Europeans to the Pacific, the most consequential thing to have happened in these islands since the arrival of the Polynesians themselves. And so, while we might have come simply to see the heiau, with its tantalizing glimpse of a remote and cryptic Polynesian past, it was, in fact, the intersection of these two histories that had brought us to Kealakekua Bay. Cook's arrival in the Hawaiian Islands marks a turning point in the history of European understanding of the Pacific. It was January, 1778, and he was a year and a half into his 3rd voyage. In the course of the first 2, Cook had explored much of the South Pacific, laying down the east coast of Australia, circumnavigating New Zealand, charting many of the major island groups, even making the first crossing below the Antarctic Circle. On his 3rd and final voyage, he was headed into new territory, that part of the Pacific that lies north of the equator. He had set his sights on one of the great chimerical objects of European geography, the Northwest Passage, and when he chanced upon the island of Kauai, he was bound for Nootka Sound. At the time, the Hawaiian Islands were not yet marked on any European map. In hindsight, it is quite surprising that they remained undiscovered as long as they did. For more than 200 years, beginning as early as the 1560s, Spanish galleons had plied the North Pacific, sailing from Acapulco to Manila and back again once or twice a year, passing just south of Hawaii on the westward journey and just north of it as they sailed back east, without ever realizing that the islands were there. Cook, on the other hand, was sailing north from Tahiti, along what would eventually be recognized as an ancient Polynesian sea road, when he accidentally encountered the Hawaiian chain in what would prove to be the last great Pacific discovery by any European explorer. Cook stopped only briefly on this first pass. The window for northern explorations was narrow, and he had no time to spare. But that autumn, when the northern ice began to close in, he returned to examine the islands more carefully, falling in with the north coast of Maui.